So I think we will go ahead and start. My name is Arturo Cervantes, and I am glad to be moderating this panel. Thank you very much to the National Academies of Medicine, of Science, Engineering, and Medicine for organizing this forum, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Over the next couple of hours, we are going to be exploring selected individual SDGs and how their targets directly are related to violence prevention. So this panel has the opportunity to have four great speakers, and I'm going to introduce each one of them before they start speaking. So on the video system, on the video conferencing, we have Luigi De Martino. He's going to be our first speaker today, this evening. And Luigi is the coordinator of the Secretariat of the Geneva Declaration on Armed Violence and Development, a diplomatic initiative signed by 112 states, aiming at reducing in a measurable way armed violence by 2015 and beyond. Luigi has worked for more than 10 years as a researcher, trainer, and consultant on conflict, violence, and development issues. Luigi, thank you very much for being with us. You have the floor.
Thank you, Arturo, and thank you to the organizers for this invitation and for organizing actually the remote link. I would have loved to be in Washington today, but unfortunately it was not possible. I hope that you can hear me loud and clear. Let me know if there is any problem with the connection or with the volume. So first of all, I would like to just say that my presentation today would focus on four, let's say, big parts. First of all, very quickly on the Geneva Declaration, and let's say from the Geneva Declaration to the Sustainable Development Goals. Then the bigger part of my presentation will be on the question of target 16.4 and measuring it, and then looking at why partnership and the potential for partnership. I think there is one good news and one bad news, and I will start from, the bad news is, or at the same time, the bad news and the good news. The bad news is that the Geneva Declaration has an active diplomatic process ended in December 2015 with the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals. So the 113 states that had endorsed the Geneva Declaration by that time had decided that with the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals, and specifically with the adoption of the Goal 16 on peaceful and inclusive societies, there was no need for a specific diplomatic process that was aiming at bridging development and disarmament processes with the aim to achieve measurable reduction in the global burden of armed violence and tangible improvement in human security, because basically this goal would have been taken by the UN process, by the Sustainable Development process, and is embedded in the 2030 Development Agenda under Goal 16. And of course, I think this is correct. So the Secretariat did end its active work at the end of last year. Basically, but as you see, I'm not out of my job in a way, because I've remained with the institution, the SMOM survey, that basically was providing the research arm of the Geneva Declaration and was providing the research work behind the measuring pillar of the Geneva Declaration. Now, and I think we'll come back to the bad news at the end of my presentation when we talk about partnership, is that while it is true that there is no need to have a specific diplomatic initiative to connect and bridge disarmament and development processes, it's also true that the adoption of Goal 16 does automatically translate into implementation of Goal 16 and its various targets. There are different and contested views, and also there is a lot of questions about, okay, how can we work towards the implementation of Goal 16, how we deliver it. And so here there is certainly still a big need of working with member states, with international organizations, with academic organizations, with civil society, around the question of preventing and reducing violence, and at the end of the day, delivering the vision of behind the 2030 agenda. One of the goals, of course, that have raised more debates, of course, Goal 16, and within that, the whole question of the connection between small arms or arms and development. From a research point of view, and from the work that the Geneva Declaration had done, and especially under the global burden of violence reports that we had done in 2008, 2011, and 2015, last year, we saw that basically firearms at the global level, if we take the average annual average between 2007 and 2012, would account for practically 44% of all violent deaths. Now, this, of course, depends a lot on the regions that we're talking about, with regions like Central America, where the incidence of firearms in lethal violence, and especially in homicides, much higher. If at the global level, firearms are used in 46% of all homicides, in certain regions, their share of homicides is much, much higher. And if we look at armed conflict deaths, firearms are related probably to around 32% of conflict-related deaths. Of course, because in armed conflicts there are other types of weaponry that have also a more important role. Now, this leads us to almost 200,000 deaths every year from 2007 to 2012 that are related to firearms. And this is about 100,000 out of the 508,000 violent deaths that we have assessed. This looks also only at violent deaths, doesn't look at injuries and other consequences for the survivors and for the families and for the communities and for the states. So basically, the message here is, of course, that firearms-related violence is an important issue from a public health perspective, from a security perspective, from a social perspective, and from an economic perspective. The Sustainable Development Goals now are clearly making these connections, and they represent an opportunity to bring together different communities. And under Goal 16, that you see here, Hope, on the screen, there is, for me, Goal 16, which is very broad in scope, under its various targets. It's a kind of a masterpiece in diplomacy because, of course, it avoids the words that like peace and security. So we're talking about peaceful and inclusive societies. Under Goal 16, Target 16.4 speaks about or calls states by 2030 to reach a significant reduction in the illicit arms flows. As you can see from the target, however, the question of arms flows is embedded in a target that covers also other things, such as illicit financial flows, recovery of stolen assets, and the big question of combating organized crime. Now, as I said, the 16.4 is the key opportunity to put the fight against illicit weapons on the development agenda. So far, in many cases, basically this was considered as a security or law enforcement issue and to be dealt with either under the disarmament processes or processes that are related to crime prevention, but not as a development issue. The fact that the target is, well, the goal and the target 16.4 is accompanied by indicators basically also reflects and supports the importance of measurability, not only for the programming, but also for looking at and assessing the impact of the policies and programs that have been put in place. Now, of course, this clearly implementing this type of agenda, assessing progress towards its implementation, will also contribute to the accountability of states in controlling the illicit proliferation of firearms. If this is the opportunity, I think we need to think about the specificity of the illicit arms flows that Target 16.4 wants to address. One of the key problems there is that, is the concealed nature of illicit arms trade and trafficking. So the main challenge there is that there is no, that we don't know how many weapons, illicit weapons are circulating, how much they are, how many they are, what are the values. We know some things on the routes and some of the factors that are linked to, but it's not basically possible to have a benchmark to start with and to measure the impact of how do we know that we are reducing considerably the illicit arm flows. So I think that this main challenge calls for unpacking the theory of change and the assumptions that are behind the connection that are done in the Target 16.4, but with other targets under Goal 16. So to me, this is the reasoning is like this. If we address arms control and we improve arms control measure, then we reduce the risk that arms that are often that start their life as a illicit weapon and are diverted to illicit markets. So we, by strengthening the arms control measures, reduce the risk of diversion of these arms. By reducing the diversion risk and diminishing the number of weapons that are becoming illicit and go into illicit markets, then in turn we contribute to a reduction of violence. And that's our basically outcome of that this process, and the main contribution towards the goal of an improvement in peace and security, as in Goal 16. So I think this is the reasoning that should be used to think about how do we get to a reduction of illicit arms flows when we don't know actually how many weapons there are, how many illicit weapons, what their values are, what types are, etc., etc. So in an absence of information, how do we know? How do we go about this problem? And I think this provides us a pathway to unpacking some of these questions. So as I said, I think this is what we need to think when we look at success. How do we measure success? What are the indicators that should be used to measure success under Goal 16? Now, I know that tomorrow, I think you will, or the next session will delve much more into the question of indicators. So apologies for maybe focusing already on this question and with the example of Target 16.4. Now, the SDGs and through the interagency expert group on the SDGs and the UN Statistical Commission have developed a framework, a global framework of indicators that should be used at the global level for measuring success or measuring the implementation or measuring progress of the 17 goals and the 169 targets associated with the SDGs. For 16.4, and specifically on the arms, we are looking at the indicator under 16.4.2. It speaks about the proportion of seized small arms and weapons that are recorded and traced in accordance with international standards and legal instruments. Now, this is a bit of has many things, positive and challenging sides. The global indicator looks at one aspect of the problem of illegal arms trafficking, and it's focusing specifically on seizures, so weapons that are then confiscated by the state forces, and it looks specifically at recording of the seized weapons and the tracing of seized weapons. So basically, being able to see where this weapon is coming from, where it's been produced, and what route this weapon has been following to get at the end in the hands of the authorities that have seized it. Now, these aspects, seizures, and the specific aspects of recording and tracing, they make an explicit relation to existing international instruments under the disarmament community and under the disarmament process, and specifically it relates to the legally binding UN Firearms Protocol, which is a protocol under the Conference on Corruption, and the International Tracing Instrument. So here, just a very quick table on which are the legally binding and the politically binding instruments that relate to the question of illicit flows of arms, but I will not go into the details. But as you can see, at the global level, out of the 6 relevant instruments, only 2 are legally binding, whereas the other 4 are politically binding. So the fact that the global indicator focuses on seizures and tracing is important because it puts these aspects on the international agenda. It reinforces basically the efforts that have been done under the disarmament processes. It supports practices in tracing, especially conflict arms, arms related to organized crimes, or arms involved in terrorist attacks. Clearly, this specific focus would stimulate good practices in the international, at the international level, exchanges between states in international tracing. Now, why this is important? There is also a lot of challenges. The main question is that we look at the indicator and the fact that it focuses only on seizures. Well, that's, as we said, is only one aspect. There are others that are as important as seizures. At the same time, the two aspects that are used to measure seizures, so the recording and tracing, they stimulate international practices, but actually they don't measure a reduction in the phenomena of illicit trafficking. So it's not through the measure of the global indicator that we will know if we actually know if we are making progress in dealing with the illicit traffic problem. To do that, you will need to accompany the global indicator with a set of indicators related to interventions and policies that look at the risk of the weapons becoming illicit. So how the weapons can be diverted from licit and becoming illicit. There are various phenomena or various ways in which this can happen, and I think that is important, that we'll be able to unpack it at regional, national level. The good news here is that there is a lot of that is already done under the international instruments and standards that are present in the disarmament process, and especially, as I was saying, the UN Program of Action on Small Arms, the Firearms Protocol, etc. That actually will provide a lot of inputs, for the development of these regional or regional or national indicators. Here, however, in order to put into practice the policies to reduce the risk of weapons becoming illicit, one will have to also look at the institutional capacities of governments to do so. Corruption, for example, limited technical capacity and equipment, and skills available are all factors that have an influence on the willingness and the capacity from institutions to act in a manner that is relevant for the goal. And I would say that ultimately the measure for success of the interventions or illicit arms flows will be a measurable reduction of violence in a given situation. So by looking at not only at the indicators around the weapons, both at the global and the national level, but connecting them to the indicators that look at violence, and specifically indicator 16.1 that look at violence and lethal violence in non-conflict and conflict situations. This will provide a measure of the impact that weapons-related or arms control measures are having or not. Clearly, there are a number of challenges also there to do this connection between arms and violence, that I think will need a separate discussion. I think that I would like to just point to some resources before concluding with the part on partnerships. First of all, on the website of the Small Arms Survey, you will find a short piece on the arms flows and the illicit arms flows and the connection to the 2030 development agenda. This is a research note. Two new research notes that go actually into more details, both on the overall connection between disarmament and the development agenda, and one specifically on Target 16.4 will be soon available on our website. And last but not least, and as a conclusion, the question of partnership. As I said at the beginning, the Geneva Declaration will not be there as an active diplomatic process to bring together states on, okay, how do we reach measurable reduction of violence? There will be a need to multi-stakeholder partnerships to not only mobilize data and knowledge, but also expertise and lessons from the past and from other relevant situations and experiences. This is outlined in Goal 17 of the SDGs, but we also need to see that at the moment, under Goal 16, there are very few partnerships that are already there. I think that tomorrow we will talk about some of them, specifically the one on children, and I think which is one of the most successful. We think that there is scope to look at global partnership on small arms and violence to bring together governments that are interested, but with other partners, organizations, civil society, and academia, on the question of the connection between the arms and violence. The German government seems to support such an idea and is supporting the work that we are doing in developing a platform where we bring together research tools and information that would be available on this issue. So I would say watch this space and please let me know if you are interested in these issues, and we will be able to continue this discussion further. Thank you for the attention. I hope it was relatively clear, and of course I'm available for any further questions.
Thank you very much, Luigi. And given that you are online, one of the forum members wants to pose you a question before you leave us. So I will pass the microphone over to Rodrigo Guerrero.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martino. I am Rodrigo Guerrero, former mayor of Cali. I understand the complexities of the UN organizations and the wording and things, and it's always very easy speaking from the field to make solutions, but I dare to make some considerations. First, the problem with legal and illegality. This is something we have dealt in Colombia because 1/3 of the homicides in Cali are produced by legally sold firearms. The 2/3 are illegal. At the end, it's the same. You have a homicide. The only thing is the moral tranquility of those that have been killed by fully licensed firearms, that they were killed with a fully licensed armor. It was not illegal. So it gets to a point that doesn't make that important. Secondly, I'm worried not to see measurements, because unless there are reliable information on production and distribution of firearms, it will be impossible to administer a thing. For many years, we dealt with that, but finally, probably in the world, with the contribution of WHO, we have now reliable data on homicides, so we can administer things and understand if we are going backwards or forward, which I don't see in this document. Third, something that could be done relatively easy is to trace back firearm shipments. Every so often we get in Colombia 3 or 4 tons of firearms shipments, brand new, that are coming to be distributed in Colombia. Those shipments could be traced back and make the producer accountable, because they should know to whom they are selling it. It's not a matter of they got out, and they should know to whom they are shipping this. And the final, is a matter of wording. It says, diminish the risk of diversion of arms infiltrating illicit markers. To me, this is a typical timid, useless statement. What about if we said we want to diminish the risk of women getting abused? We have said we want to abolish abuse of women and abuse of children. What about if we said we want to diminish the risk of children getting measles? No, we said we want to abolish measles worldwide. So I see a lot of timid writing in this, which I recognize the difficulties. As I said at the beginning, it's very easy in the end, of the other end, saying that it should be more clear and stronger. So excuse me, but I just wanted to let you know, and again to congratulate whatever efforts you are doing. You're making a fantastic and most important battle.
Thank you, Rodrigo Guerrero. And Luigi, I hope that you can stay with us towards the end in order for you to provide a response to Dr. Guerrero's comments. But I'm going to have to continue and move along.